All right, so what we've done up to this point in terms of input and output has only been from the command window. But if you're reading in a large data set, obviously it doesn't make a lot of sense to have somebody type in a bunch of numbers. So usually you'll be loading it from a file. And those files can have different formats. The one you've done up to this point, you've seen how to load a MATLAB workspace file. And back in 1181, we showed you how to use load to load in an ASCII file. So we'll review how to do those things and also some additional types of files like spreadsheet files. All right, so the first thing you might want to do in terms of reading and writing a file is just save your workspace. That is, you've been doing a bunch of calculations and maybe you did some of them at the command line instead of in a script, or maybe you did them in a script, but it's like a really intensive computation that takes a long time to run. And you don't want to have to run it again the next time you return to work on this program. So you can just save your results in what's called a .mat file, which is just a binary file, MATLAB only file. Okay. And it just saves the contents of your workspace. All right, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to clear everything to start from scratch. I'm going to run one of the previous day's examples, day 2. Then I'm going to save it to a workspace file, a .mat file. And then I'm going to clear the workspace. Oops, and I need to make sure my current directory is the right one. Hang on a second. Okay, that's just not where this file is. Okay. All right, so I ran the day 2 examples, and now I've got a bunch of stuff in the workspace. Right? Then I save it, and then I clear the workspace. So now if I go back here, you see there's nothing in the workspace. It's all gone. But down in the File Explorer, am I in the right place? Yes. Oh, there it is. Okay, it was not the first thing in the list, so it took me a second to find it. But right here, so day 2 examples. It says MATLAB data. Okay, that's a .mat file, the extension .mat. So it's just a binary file. Only MATLAB can read it. And the way you read it back in is with load. Okay, so load day 2 examples.mat will load in that file that I just saved and restore the workspace. Okay, so right now there's nothing in the workspace. I load that in. And it doesn't look like anything happened, but if you look at the workspace, now all that stuff is back. Okay, so when I saved the workspace, it saved all the variables and their values. And so that's all been restored. All right, so that's one way to use the save and load commands. Just save my workspace. And by the way, if you don't put a file name here, it defaults to matlab.mat. But you don't want to do that. You always want to give it a name so you know you can find it later. Another thing you do with save, let's say you don't want to save the whole workspace. You just want to save one or more variables. You can do it like this, where you put the name of the variable. Actually, that's the second argument, the name of the variable. And the name of the file is the first argument. And again, you could save it as a .mat file if you wanted, or you can save it as an ASCII file. In other words, a text file. So that allows you to export results from MATLAB and then load it into some other software. whether it's a spreadsheet or LabVIEW or whatever. All right. So this switch dash ASCII means save it as a text file. All right, so I'm going to save this, just this one matrix to a file, clear the workspace, and then load it back in. So this is the way you did things back in 1181. We would give you a text file and you would load it like so. Okay, so notice when I saved it, and let me go show you that file. All right, so when I saved it, it created this file, which is just text. So you can open it with WordPad or Notepad. And there's nothing in there but numbers. So the name of the variable was not saved, which means when I load it in, I can give it a different variable. Okay. That is, give it a different variable name. All right, so previously I had a variable called matrix3. I saved it as a text file, loaded it back in. But when I loaded it in, I chose to call it M3. Right, so I actually changed its name. Now, one little pitfall. Notice the syntax is different here. If we give you a mat file, and this, by the way, is usually what we give you on the exam. So that reminds me, I'm going to take a pause after this and remind you about the exam. But usually on the exam, we'll give you a .mat file, and all you have to do is this. Do not do this. With a .mat file, if you put a variable name equals something, and that's not even proper syntax, but you might try to do this. Let's see. It does something, but what it does is it stores this in what's called a struct, which we haven't covered yet. Okay, so we see people do this on the exam. We tell them to do this. But they don't follow instructions and they do this instead, and they get this struct and they have no idea what to do with it. All right. So on the exam, make sure you follow the instructions exactly. Do what we tell you, which is this. And we'll come back in a couple of weeks and talk about what a struct is. All right, so just notice that it's just, this is an unfortunate thing. The syntax is different depending on whether you're loading in a workspace file like this or loading in a text file like this. And it's when people mix up the syntax of the two that they get in trouble. All right, so that's save and load.